one of the greatest things you can do as a content creator is be authentic, open yourself up, let people into your hurt and your pain, and continue your journey of healing. It could be business, emotional, relationship. I bet you I would that podcast completely blown up as a result.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It is Adam A. Adams, your host of the podcast on podcasting. And today is a treat, a really special treat, because as you know, I get a lot of new podcasters that come on and share their story, and they share some of their learning lessons, some of their tips, some of the tricks, what they've done wrong, and how you can overcome it. And today's slightly different because I actually have somebody with a crazy popular podcast. Just to kind of give you an example, there are a couple of numbers that we had that are the same, which I'm really happy about because I feel like I'm getting close to up there, but there's some things that he's really doing that is really quite impressive. And that's what I wanted to share with you. This is Tracy Brinkmann. And if you want to look at his bio, just scroll down. We put all of our guests' bios in the show notes. You'll see that he's a podcast creator. He owns a company. He helps entrepreneurs. He helps podcasters. He does similar things to what Grow Your Show would do, like editing, post-production, to be able to help other podcasters. And he's got this thing, it's called a listen score. If you go to listennotes.com, you can find out what your listen score is. Now, they'll only show you if you're in the top 10%. Like if you're not in the top 10%, you won't even see yourself. You won't know where you are. You just know you're somewhere in the bottom 90 percentile. But eventually you'll be on there. And Tracy's podcast has actually it's called Dark Horse Entrepreneur. His podcast is got a listen score of 51, which is the exact same listen score as we have, which is just awesome because I feel like I look up to this guy. And 51 is really high. I know because we take screenshots of all of our clients' results, and a lot of them they're in the 30s. So it's just wonderful to see, 51 is wonderful. Additionally, he has way more ratings and reviews than we have. We're like around 400 and he's pretty close to 600. So he's got like a 50-ish% more written ratings and reviews, like written reviews and 5-star ratings than the podcast of podcasting. He also helps people like you. So you might want to check out his stuff, Dark Horse Entrepreneur. You either have the option of just going and typing that in wherever you listen to podcasts, or to make it easy, we put in the show notes, Dark Horse Entrepreneur. Just scroll down, click it, and you can check out his podcast. Also, he ranks in the top 0.5% on Listen Notes as well, among all 2.77 million podcasts. And that's where we show up to, but I'm guessing he's slightly above where we are. I mean, if they had a 0.4%, he would probably, be there or something. Who knows? Anyway, Tracy, it's really cool to have you. Yesterday we recorded on his podcast. In this episode today is probably going to come out September, most likely.
Okay.
Maybe about the same time. But if you're listening, if you're still with us, here's what you're going to get. Because he also serves podcasters, because his podcast has way more ratings and reviews than ours, like 200 more, because his listen score is really high, his rankings are very, very high, we're going to get some unique stuff from somebody who's like really, really well into this and serves other podcasters to kind of get that perspective. So, Tracy, where I think I want to start is here. I'm curious, why did you launch your podcast, Dark Horse, and what does the Dark Horse mean?
Well, I was telling you about this yesterday when we were recording on my podcast that I actually started podcasting before podcasting was cool, right? It was back in 2007. Apple did a podcast, I didn't even know what that was. And I was using something, I believe it was called a Blog Talk Radio website to do my original podcast. And then later on, I moved over to Blueberry as my host. And I think in both times, I started for the same reason. I started because I thought I had a message I wanted to get out, right? I had been through some of the major ups and downs of life and business and relationships, and I knew I could share we'll call them gems. And if I could share those gems while talking to other folks, as well as doing myself, I thought it would be awesome because I was a podcast listener. I was a consumer of digital content back then. I thought, man, if there's one person out there that my voice or the voice of whoever I end up talking with could help, I would just be thankful for that one to be in someone's epitaph, because I know when I was going through my abyss of life, having someone to listen to or to share that knowledge that could pull me out of my depression or pull me out of the slump of sales or whatever it was I was going through, man, would have been gold. And I had a couple of those. So it was my time to step up, I felt, and share the wealth, pay it forward kind of thing. And so that started my original podcast. And then it started the second one. And the second one was completely different. And I'm going to get to your answer in a second. Feel free to rein me in anytime.
Keep going.
When I started the second one, it was all focused on personal development, right? I wanted to get on the microphone and spew that high energy goodness. And I did it 5 days a week. And then about 3 months in, I shifted the model. And on Monday, I would, again, give the free episode in all its goodness and then tease you what I'm going to be sharing on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But the only way you could get to that content was now behind a pay gate, which were way different, in the early 2000s than they are now. And so that built up this small, it was like, I think I undervalued myself. It was like $9 a month or whatever it was. And I got myself a little revenue stream going on doing that. And, every once in a while I'd bring on a guest and interview them. But this was pretty much a solo venture. Again, just spewing that Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins kind of content. And there was a point about 2 years in where I felt like a bit of a fake, right? Because here I was getting on the microphone and telling you all the great ways that you can improve your life, improve your business and everything. Meanwhile, I was going through a divorce. I was getting ready to file for bankruptcy, right? And just my life was falling apart around me, but it was falling apart because I decided to take a stance and say, this relationship just isn't working, right? It's time for us to go our separate ways, hence divorce. Everything was falling apart. So I decided to hang up the microphone. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I should have continued and just open myself up, because there are people going through exactly what I was going through at that moment that I could have helped by sharing and being vulnerable. But I'll call it the easy way out.
I want you to say that again. I want you to say that again. Like, let it really sink in for our listener.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things you can do as a content creator is be authentic, open yourself up, and be vulnerable. Let people into your hurt and your pain, let them see the wound, and then continue them along your journey of healing, whatever that is. It could be business healing. It could be emotional healing. It could be relationship healing. And if I'd have done that, I bet you that podcast then would have just completely blown up as a result. But I hung up the microphone and wanted to pull myself together, which took a couple of years, and I got to the point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to do this again. And that's when I decided to start the latest podcast, The Dark Horse Entrepreneur. And the dark horse I picked because I feel that at some point, all of us feel like that underdog, the person that's counted out, that dark horse that you could win if they just gave you a chance to step into the gate and burst out at the starting run, right? I could get in there and I could run my race. And even if I don't win, place, or show, just the fact that I crossed the finish line, that's a win right there in my book.
I like that. I had a woman on the podcast. She had been a professional cheerleader, like I think a football team and a basketball team over her career. And she's maybe only like 35 now. She's got a couple of kids. And she tried out for another cheerleading thing. And she didn't make it. She didn't end up making it. And she said all of her friends kept telling her, oh, I'm really sorry you didn't succeed. I'm really sorry you failed. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I didn't fail. Like you're talking about the dark horse and running your race, and just crossing the finish line. She goes, I didn't fail. She goes, I worked my ass off. I put my time in and I passed all except for the very final round. And I've had 2 kids and it's been like 10 years since. And I've got a mom body that I had to work in and I'm way healthier now. And I didn't fail. I crushed it. I'm really proud of what I was able to accomplish from this. And I think it's really good to hear you talking about running your own race, not really looking at what everybody else is doing, but looking at what you're doing and comparing yourself to where you were yesterday versus to where this other person is.
That's it right there. Yeah. The only person you should be comparing yourself is to yourself. And to your point, I try now, right? Like I said, I've gone through the dark times. I try now to let people know it's not failure, it's feedback, right? Okay, you tried something and you expected result A, but you got result B or C or D. It's still feedback. You still learn something through the process. The lady you just talked about, right? She went through it and maybe she expected to get on the team, but she didn't. She got feedback and all that feedback is telling her, look, I'm healthier. I look better. I'm really in shape. I'm 10 years older and I can still do it.
Yeah.
I'm awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if she wasn't, she would have been cut the very first round.
Right.
But they thought she was good enough, healthy enough, attractive enough. Unfortunately, usually they want you to be attractive.
Yeah,
and
there's a fact.
She still had all that stuff, even as a mother 10 years later. So love it, love it. You know what's funny? I really enjoy this thought process that you're sharing with us about vulnerabilities. And I have decided, I'm deciding right now that I'm going to record a solo episode that falls probably right before this one comes out that is about some vulnerabilities of my own. So I'll probably do that, but you're really inspiring to do that and to be okay with it. Do you mind sharing for me, because I'm about to do this?
Sure.
I'm literally going to do it like after this conversation with you. But additionally, I am 85% sure, and that's a lot. That's very sure. I'm 85 or maybe possibly 85.5% sure that our listener or two is thinking to themselves, you know what, like that's all fine and dandy to be vulnerable, to share these things, but why would I do it? How would I do it? You're saying it's important, but like, how do we go about doing it? Like, what's the process and what's the real like ROI on putting in that time?
You know, there's a couple of thoughts I put behind that. I know when I started podcast number 2, I put together an episode that I called The 10 Reasons You Should Not Listen to Me, right? And inside of that was a few of those things like, hey, if you're looking for some dude that's an expert like a Tony Robbins or a Zig Ziglar or a Jim Rohn, I'm not him, right? I listen to him.
Hey,
right?
When I was on your podcast, that's the name I kept wanting to come up with.
Oh my God.
I couldn't think of it.
He's like the Godfather.
We need to re-record yours. We need to re-record. All right. I interrupted you.
No, you're fine.
It was uncalled for. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
So you were saying you put this episode together. It was the 10 reasons you wouldn't want to follow me.
Right. The 10 reasons you don't want to listen to me.
And one of them was, I'm not going to be that expert if you're looking for Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn. So that's where I cut you off. Keep going.
Sure. And I went through all the different things that a lot of people, myself included, early on, would look at to say, okay, that's the kind of person I want to follow. I want to follow someone who's an expert, who's all clean cut and's got their shit together, right? To put it bluntly. I hope that's okay. I don't know about language.
You have a pretty epic beard.
Thank you. But then, and so I just went through that list of 10 and I found I got a lot of feedback from that episode, right? You go 20, 30, 40, 50 episodes in and people are still going back and listening to that original episode going, dude, when you said I was not the perfect guy for any of this, I felt you. That's the reason I started listening to you in the first place, because I'm tired of all the experts. I want to find someone that went through the crap that I went through. And so sitting down and looking into your own abyss, whatever your abyss might be, right? Like I tell folks in my story that I had 3 major dips in my life. One was overcoming drugs. to the point where 5-0 literally kicked open the door to my condo. That's how bad it got. The other was the loss of an 18-month-old daughter, right? That crushes so many people out there. And if you've experienced that, man, my heart goes out to you. It's a pain I have never wished on my worst enemy. And then there was the divorce and the bankruptcy that all kind of happened all together. And in each one of those moments, staring back into those, there were lessons that I had to learn in order to move forward. Because I find that if you don't learn the lesson, life and its infinite wisdom will keep putting the lesson in front of you until you learn it. And then the moment you learn it, then you're like, man, if I just would have listened 2, 5, 10 years ago, my life would be so much further advanced. And in your ability to sit down and look back into that abyss and then articulate it to your tribe, your audience, whoever it is you're trying to connect with, you're sharing with them, look, it's okay to look back at that monster and stare it down in the face with or without a shield and sword and say, I overcame you because fill in the blank. Because I learned about this, I learned I can't be around those kind of people. It's not just the drugs, it's the people that suck you in, right? You've got to completely break away. Whatever the lessons were for you to move forward, share them, and just open up. I think the first step to answer your original question is you've got to look in, right? It's that inward look. We talked a bit about that spirituality piece of things. That inward looking is a piece of that spirituality for me. And then you can share it out and people will feel your truth coming out. If you're like, oh, well, yeah, I was a bit of a drunkard. Well, okay, that's great. We all teetotal a little bit. But when you say, dude, I woke up underneath an IROC Z one evening because I was so drunk that I was walking home in the cold, and the only way I could find warmth was to crawl under a car that had been recently running. Whoa, now we got a completely different story and vision going on. This dude crawled under a car just to get warm. How did he get to where he's at from there, right? Share those types of truths from your life. Yeah, you're going to look a little dirty. You're going to look a little mucky. Guess what? You were, and that's okay. That's who you were. Now you can share, here, I'm going to take you on that journey. We've all heard the hero's journey. Share with them your hero's journey. And, look, I'm not done yet. I'm still going. Come on along. Maybe I'm 1 step ahead of you, maybe 2, maybe I'm 100 steps ahead of you, right? Maybe you'll catch up and pass me. That's awesome too. Now I'll start learning from you.
Yeah. There's a lot to that. There's a lot to what you're saying. You mentioned the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. It makes me think of like a lot of the heroes that we follow. Let's just take like Skywalker. Mm-hmm. And like Yoda. Yoda's kind of like a guide to the hero. But like if there wasn't ups and downs, we wouldn't want to watch him.
Right.
If there wasn't hardships, we wouldn't have anything to relate. Mm-hmm. Superman, for example, if he was completely invulnerable, we wouldn't like be able to really connect with him and want to be him as much. But because of that kryptonite, mm-hmm. It can allow us to be thinking like, what's my kryptonite? Mm-hmm. What am I struggling with? And so the thought process of the hero's journey is a big takeaway. I think it can be really helpful for us as the influencer. I think it could also be really helpful for us to just think about when we're making a solo episode, for example, if we're going to be bringing up a story of somebody, to be able to have both sides of the story, the pros and the cons, the struggles and, the tension and the release, the struggles and what ultimately happily ever after. But they do it in music. They do it in every movie that you've ever watched. They go tension, release, tension, release. They do a dissonant chord. They do, a 4, a 5, and then a 1. This person was struggling with this, and then they almost made it, and then this other thing happened.
Right.
And it makes it interesting. So we can use that stuff in our own conversation. So I really appreciate it. The next takeaway that I'm hearing is how important it is to be real and raw with ourselves. Just like with Superman and kryptonite. If our listener thinks that we're always perfect and always have been perfect, the only ones of them that are going to want to follow us are the ones that are perfect. The others can't relate, but none of us are perfect. Mm-hmm. So we really need to share that. That was a really, really good takeaway. So you mentioned like how to do it. You mentioned like why to do it. And I think that was all really, really, really effective. I'm wondering like, what would you say to somebody who was listening and they knew how and why, but they were still like arguing? They were still saying, well, I couldn't tell somebody that I went bankrupt. Well, I couldn't tell somebody about my drug addiction or whatever it is, like, or maybe if they thought, for example, if they thought to themselves, yeah, but I am clean cut. You got this giant beard and I shave every day or whatever it is. I'm trying to put on this other image or whatever it is. And I couldn't tell somebody that I went into drugs. I've got kids or whatever it is. What would you share with that person who's arguing and thinks that they've got excuses why not to do it?
I think probably the first step I would give them is to step away from the ego mirror, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that are going to hold us back is that ego of how people are going to perceive you. Look, here's the thing. Half the people are going to like you. Half the people are not going to like you. That's all there is to it. Here's what's going to happen when you share your truth. You share the fact that you were into this and got out of that. Some of those numbers are going to trade sides, right? Some of the people that did like, you're going to go, ooh, you did that. I could never resonate with that. And boom, now they're over here on the side that doesn't like you. At the same time, the people that previously didn't like you are going to go, oh, well, shit, I went through the same thing. I get that. Or my brother did, or my father did, right? Someone they respected went through that. And now they're leaning into you a little bit more. And they're over on the other side. So half the people are going to like you, half the people are going to not like you. The question would be, do you want to like yourself? And I'm the fan of wanting to like myself. Here's a quick story on the decision to tell my kids about drugs. Because I grew up with parents that smoked and they are always preaching the banner, don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke. It's not good for you. While they were doing this, right? He says as he mocks making a cigarette in his mouth. When I had two young girls, they were like 5 years apart. I told my wife back then that I'm telling them about my dark days. I'm not going to tell them everything, but I'm going to tell them from the perspective of, look, I did it. I hosed up. I'm imperfect. I'm human. And so I'm telling you, don't do drugs because I've seen it and I've experienced it firsthand. And I would hate to see you have to go through that. I'm the guide. I'm going to be your Yoda for a minute, right? Or I'm going to be your Mr. Miyagi. You karate do yes, or you karate do no. No in the middle, otherwise squish, just like a grape, right? And my kids now, my oldest is 35. She went in for a little bit, but that came right back out when she started seeing the things I was telling her stories about. She's like, wow, red flag, red flag, red flag, out of it and doesn't touch it. My youngest never got into it. So I'm hopeful a little parenting skill went in with that. But the idea is I wasn't preaching on high from, hey, don't do this because it's bad for you. It's more of I'm telling you the stories from experience. I saw the downside of it and the dude hanging himself and people, selling their souls and family to get their next fix. So I didn't want to be that liar inside of me. So I started opening up. I was becoming vulnerable. Sure, could my kids have liked me a little less as a result? Maybe, right? They could have prejudged, but that comes with, all right, well, that's okay too, because you can prejudge me because I went through it and I'm on the other side now. I'm okay with who I am. If I could go back and relive those years, would I make some changes? Well, hell yeah. I'm a different person now. But again, all those choices and all those learnings brought me to where I am this very day. And as of right now, kind of happy with the guy I turned out to be. Not always proud of the things I did, but where I am today, I'm pretty damn proud of. And hopefully my kids are proud of the dad. And, so again, it comes back to step away from the ego mirror and look to yourself. Like Michael Jackson says, it all starts with the man in the mirror or the woman. whichever you prefer.
Love it. Half will like you, half will not. And sharing your story could alter that and sway them. And people might feel fear of missing out. They might say to themselves, well, if I tell my story and somebody who likes me will no longer like me, I say, well, hell, who cares? They're not your real fan anyway. They're not your true fan. And if they know you and they still love you, then they are. It's like with your sweetheart, if you are dating or married or engaged or whatever, those people you want to be able to be your whole self with. You want them to know you to the core. And like that's when we have harmony, is when our spouse, for example, knows exactly who we are, what we stand for, what we like, what we don't like, where we're pig-headed, where we're bull-headed, where we're oblivious, and how we squeeze the toothpaste, how we leave this toilet seat.
Yep.
And they still stick with it. If we're hiding who we truly are, where we came from, or what we struggle with from them, then they don't really know us. And so that love isn't really love. And same thing for like your listener. And I think additionally, Tracy, and to our listener, I think additionally, our listener or your listener on your podcast, when you have one or the one that you have now, or Tracy's, if, for example, you do share this stuff and are real and raw and vulnerable and authentic, what can, I believe, happen is your listener can trust you. They can know who you are and what you stand for. They can understand where you're coming from. And so regardless if they like the choice or not, if you tell them the choice that you had made, then it's like a way for them to feel comfortable with the other things that you say that are good or bad, because they feel like they can trust it, because you're sharing the actual truth.
Right.
And you illustrated that yourself, Tracy, when you were talking about how with your kids, you said, I did not want to become that liar inside of me. I didn't want to be a liar. I didn't want to say lies. I didn't want them to think a different thing. So I just tell them exactly how it is and let them know how to learn from it. On my first podcast that I sold, you had a podcast way before I started mine. I started mine in like 2015, 2016. And when I sold it in 2020, it was doing really well. But one of the things that I did on there that changed the trajectory in a good way, and I expected it to be bad, was I talked about, this is a real estate podcast. I talked about how I almost lost a bunch of money in real estate. And I literally made a horrible mistake and I didn't catch it. One of my investors caught it and I was embarrassed, and I just shared it because I thought that I would lose all faith. I thought everybody would lose faith. Maybe a couple of people did. Maybe they did. They didn't tell me about it. But what I did hear was dozens more, maybe even hundreds more, but dozens and dozens more people that had been listening for a long, long time and heard me talking about superficial stuff, acting like I never made mistakes. For the first time ever, they said, Adam, now I want to invest with you. You made this horrible mistake. You almost lost your past investors' money, and I want to invest with you. That was the last thing I ever thought that I would hear. But I think it's like because they knew who I was. They knew that I would be willing to be vulnerable. So I think that that's a really good takeaway, Tracy, what about, I want to ask your advice on a couple of things.
Sure.
Like you've been helping other podcasters. You've been having your own podcast. You're one of the original podcasters. If you were started when you say you started, then you're one of the originals. Well, I'm wondering, like, if I said that I wanted to monetize, what would you say to me?
Well, it depends. For me, it depends on what you have ongoing in the background. So why did you start the podcast? If you started the podcast because you like koi fish, okay, that's cool. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to teach what you know in called an online course. That's one of the things I love. I'm a big fan of online courses. So there's an opportunity there where you could take your knowledge The infopreneur, like you read earlier, take your information and lay it out into a lesson plan and teach other people what you know. Okay, there's an opportunity there. And here's one of the cool things when it comes to a podcast is you could lay out your entire lesson plan that if someone bought it, that would take them maybe 10, 16, 27 hours to go through to all of it, right? All the beginning to advanced stuff. And you could give out every single one of those pieces of content as an episode. Of course, it'll take you a while. If you did one episode a week and it was 30 minutes to an hour, well, there you got 27 weeks of content there if you had 27 hours, and people would still buy the course. They're like, I don't want to give away my stuff for free. Well, yeah, you do. You do want to give away your stuff for free because that brings people in. Don't hide the gems. Put the gems out there. They're going, man, that's the stuff he's giving away. So there's opportunity one. You could do that. Obviously, there's the ever-aging sponsorships. You could reach out to different, we'll stick with the koi pond guy, people that build ponds, right? People that sell koi fish, people that treat water. Any one of those businesses are all over the United States. You could reach out to them and say, look, I have a very niche podcast about koi fish. You're the koi master in the Midwest area. How about you sponsor my podcast for X amount for X period of time, and I will give you a pre-read or a mid-roll read telling my listeners who love koi fish about your koi fish business in the middle of my podcast, right when I've got them all hooked and they're all juiced up going, man, I need 8 new koi fish. Then I hit them with, oh, by the way, get your koi fish from Bob's Koi Fish, and then give them all your contact information. Boom. What business owner would say no to that? You're like, dude, that's money. I'm spending that same amount of marketing budget advertising on the internet, on Facebook, and all these other places. So now you have the hungry audience. You're saying, hey, here it is. I will dangle them in front of you. I'm going to beat up this koi fish analogy. So there's the sponsorship opportunity. And then there's the other ones where, you get folks that are like, hey, per 1,000 downloads, we do that. That's, for me, that's way down at the bottom. And then if you could bring on that person that is your listener and answer their questions as part of an episode, now maybe they want to hire you to get that next level of information, be it your online courses or one-on-one coaching or things like you do, right? You have that awesome packages that you have doing different levels of podcast production and marketing. Someone listens to your podcast and goes, wow, I could do all that stuff he's telling me about, or Tracy's telling me about, or I could just hire Adam and his team and have them do it for me and let me focus on what it is I'm really good at, which is koi fish. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. So to wrap that up, you're basically saying there's a lot of ways to monetize.
There are ways. You know what? I saw someone put out a lead magnet saying 100 ways to monetize your podcast. I didn't read it.
100?
But I thought, okay, that maybe not 100, but certainly you could sit down and come up with 10 or 20,
I made a list and it had like 6 or 7. We did a podcast episode about it, and toward the beginning, it's called More Than One Way to Monetize. So I'll instruct my team right now. Team, please go ahead and link that. Yeah, More Than One Way to Monetize. It's like 7 ways or something like that. 100.
Yeah, that seems like an extreme.
These are like, they have to be subtopics. Yeah. Well,
that was clickbait, 1, obviously.
You could go to this restaurant and ask them. Number 2, you could go to this other restaurant. Number 3, so just lump it in. It's going to a restaurant and asking them. You don't have to say every single brand. Anyway, cool stuff. So Tracy, if I was a brand new podcaster, and I know you've worked with lots of podcasters, you've been podcasting for a long, long time. Your podcast is doing really, really well. The second one that I looked at is doing really, really well. So if I was wondering, like, for example, what do I need in order to start a podcast? I'm brand new. What do I need? Like, what would you tell me?
You know what? I would say you need a STAR aim, right? And that's an acronym for you need some subject matter content that you bring to the table, whatever it may be. Entrepreneurship, koi fishing, podcasting, real estate, like you were talking about earlier. Then you need a tribe to who you are part of. right? You were in the real estate field. Now you're in the podcasting field. So that's your tribe, right? So your special content, your special subject matter, and your tribe. Your A is where the arrival, where do you want to take them? And then the R for star is the reason they want to listen to you, or why they're going to resonate, right? Why should they listen to Tracy, right? Used to be a drug dealer. Why should I listen to that fool, right?
Were you a drug dealer?
Did I say that out loud? That's why they kicked open the door to my house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. I got into it, man. I'm telling you, it was a way to support the habit. So yeah, it was. If we would, that's a whole nother podcast episode if you wanted to go there. But
that's
certainly,
how you know Tracy's a true entrepreneur. Anyone who's a drug dealer is.
I'm telling you that I learned so many entrepreneurial skills in that time, and how to read people, right? When it's your life on the line, you got to know how to read people. The little cues. Anyway, so the star aim, right? We're talking about that subject matter expert. You don't have to be the expert. That subject matter you're going to bring, the tribe you're going to be talking to, where you're going to take them, so where they're going to arrive, and why they're going to resonate, why they want to listen to you. And then after that is your aim, right? Some anchor, some alluring anchor that you're going to bring along with you, some hook that maybe opens your show. I know one of the things I say in my show is you're ready to start, restart, or kickstart your infopreneur business, right? Some little catchphrase and hook them in with. And you want to be a bit inspiring. You know, I think so many people are just tired of listening to the talking heads speaking to you all the time, right? You want to bring some energy. And I'm not saying you have to be, a Zig Ziglar or an Anthony Robbins, pumping your fist in the air, but bring your energy, whatever that is. And then it's your message, right? Now you got all that other stuff lined up. Now you're going to start telling them what it is you want to tell them, because you know who you are, you know who you're talking to, you know where you're going to take them, you know why they're going to listen to you, right? And you've got that energy going. Now, behind all that, you're going to say, the reason you want to start a podcast is. That is a long answer to your question, I think.
Okay. So the question was, what would you share with somebody who was brand new and to be able to get them started?
Mm-hmm.
And one of my quick takeaways before really getting into the answer, and by the way, the STAR, I didn't write down the A, so you'll have to tell me again in a second, not yet.
Sure. Okay.
One of the big things is when you are on somebody else's podcast, if you're listening, you're the listener. I'm not talking to Tracy right now. I'm talking to you. If you're on somebody else's podcast, do similar to what Tracy just did. Have a story. Like when we talked about Skywalker and Yoda. If you've heard me on other podcasts, have a story like where I talk about drawing your line in the sand, and that guy whose name is the cave person whose name is who figured out fire and drawing the line in the sand. Stories are really good, and acronyms are really good. And so we've got an acronym here that's STAR, AIM, and it helps to be memorable, because now people are, for example, me, I'm like, ooh, I think I missed that first A. What was that first A? So S is for subject matter, T is for tribe, and then what was right before resonate?
A is for arrive. Where are you going to take them? Where are they going to arrive?
Okay. And then resonate, and then anchor. How do you anchor? Inspire. Basically, how do you get them to make the next choice? And then the M is for the message. So really good stuff. I want you, as you're listening, to think, all right, I'm going to get on other people's podcasts. I want people to remember it. So I'm going to make a cave person story about, or I'm going to use an acronym like STAR, AIM, or people, KISS, keep it simple, stupid,
Right.
Like use these acronyms. And what it does is it makes your message more memorable. It makes it more resonate, and it makes it so people can refer back to it a little bit easier, so they aren't going to miss those steps. Now, I just wanted to stop for a moment just to tell that to the listener, that I noticed that you did that. And I also acknowledge that you did it and commend that you did it. It's a really easy way for us to be with you and not to forget. When you're going to give us 7 things, it's a lot, but when you put it in a way like this, it helps us to be able to kind of memorize it. Now, if we're going to launch a podcast, the subject matter, tribe, arrive, resonate, anchor, inspire, message, all important. What would you say to us if we were wondering, like, how to record or where to record? If our hang up was like basically what equipment to use, what would you share with us?
I would say, first off, when it comes to equipment, buy the best mic you can afford. And
what does afford mean? In this example, like if I had a credit card and it had a $40,000 limit, should I go and buy a $40,000 mic?
Well, no. I mean, you can.
What does it mean I can afford?
Well, for me, when I first started, affording to me was, man, it had to be under $100, but I wanted the best I could afford under $100. Okay. And oddly enough, and hopefully I'm saying this thinking I sound good, I'm using that same microphone to this day. I can afford a little bit more, but I haven't leveled up yet because I haven't found the need to go to that next level of the $400 or $800 microphone, right?
Which mic is it?
Mine is the Blue Snowball.
Okay.
All right. So buy the piece of equipment you can afford. And if you got $40,000, man, go out there and find that Shure or that microphone that you hear everyone. And there's 100 people that will tell you what microphone to get with all the codes. And hey, get the ATS this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fine, go for it. Yeah, you could go to sweetwater.com and type best podcast microphones. Right? Sweetwater's is one of those electronic websites. You could go to Amazon for that matter and put best podcast microphone.
I will say I have to interrupt you because
sure.
There's a Blue Yeti that's a condenser mic and it usually gets pretty echoey. Mm-hmm. But if you go to Amazon and go podcast mic, it's usually the first one that comes up. Oh. But I don't feel like it's the right type of microphone to use for a podcast, the Blue Yeti. So I will say, be careful, everybody going in and Googling or Amazon just searching automatically. I do have like a couple mics that I prefer over that one, but yeah, that is good feedback. I just didn't want anyone to buy a Blue Yeti.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one. And here's one of the cool things. A lot of the music stores like Guitar Center and stores like that are starting to stock a lot of these microphones now that are more for podcasting, right? And so you can go in there and hear the sound of them and get a feel for it. Cool. And a lot of those staff there would be happy to share with you, hey, you need this, you need that, right? With a few questions. So getting that good mic, I am a big fan of a good pop filter in front of it, whether that's one of the nylon ones with screen with a circle, or if you have the foam going around your microphone. I see you have the foam. I have both on mine. I don't know why. I think I keep the pop filter here because I'm very animated, and the pop filter is about an inch away from my microphone, so I know I can hit the pop filter and not hit my microphone. It's kind of my warning buffer there. And for me, I like an arm, like one of the boom arms that hangs the microphone at the level of your voice.
Why do you like that? So you're already saying one reason, and I was cutting you off because it puts it right exactly where you need it.
Right. So I don't have to worry about it. It's right in that right spot for me. And I can look at you on the screen here, and I like having a face to look at, and I don't have to lean into it or arch my neck down or anything like that. It's right in the right spot for me. And if you adjust your chair and you got that little thing sitting on your desk, that's fine too. Whatever works for you, I think, is probably the good equipment solution. But I'm a big fan of the arm for those reasons. And when it comes to video, right, getting yourself a camera that's not usually installed, come standard with your laptop or your desktop, whatever it is, get you one that's got the next level of resolution. I think got a Nexco with the little cover on it and all 9 yards, because just like you do, I use the video and the audio to turn it into multiple pieces of content, to turn it into marketing pieces, little snippets, for the Instagrams and the TikTok. That way you record it once, and then you can sit there and, you could do it or have your team do it, chop it up into those little pieces rather than having to go back and go, oh, hey, listen to this one. You re-record something talking about the episode with Adam Adams and what have you.
Love it. Hey, so if you're listening, go ahead and scroll down. You'll see in the show notes that all the information for Tracy, like his website and his podcast and his bio too, is all down there. But feel free to just scroll down, connect with him, listen to the podcast. It's obviously performing really, really well. Tracy, I want to find out, as we leave, what is the one quick golden nugget that you think a new podcaster needs to know?
For me, I think the nugget I'd like to leave folks with is be you. whatever and whoever you are, right? I've spent my time in corporate America being the Coca-Cola guy or the Home Depot guy or even the Victoria's Secret guy. Yeah, I worked at Victoria's Secret, right? Which was awesome, by the way.
I bet.
But the image and the person I had to portray to get in that door and to keep that role until I proved myself with my value and then was able to grow my hair out and let the beard start to grow, were two different people, right? And so I went in authentic, putting on the face that I know that they wanted to see. And in podcasting, I don't think you want to do that. I think you want to come right out of the gate is, this is me. This is who I am. Moles and scars and beard and all. If you like it, cool, man, let's jam together. If you're not quite sure, come hang out and let's make sure. And if you find I'm not for you, that's okay. There's 2 million other podcasts out there. You will find the right one for you. And that serves you and your audience. It really serves you because the people that will resonate with you, you'll find because you're being you. And the people that don't, well, then you've pretty much done that, that distraction marketing. You've pushed them away because they're probably not the person that you want to vibe with or do business with or have listening to your show in the first place.
That's a really great place to end. Tracy, thanks for jumping on the podcast. Hey, if you're listening, every other podcast episode is a solo episode. And I really do want to pour into you, just you and me as well. So this has been a great interview with Tracy. And the next episode is just going to be me pouring into your business. So don't even go anywhere. Just listen to the next episode and I'll see you there. If you're glad that you checked out the podcast today, if you got some value out of this episode, some actionable takeaways, I invite you to do one of 3 things. A, you could do a written review on Apple. Let us know what you think. Just an honest written review. B, you could share the podcast with a friend of yours who needs it. Or C, at the very least, implement what you've learned to take your business and your podcast to the next level. And I'll see you on the next episode.